I regret sitting on the Tormented Souls games until a few months after the sequel arrived in 2025. As a longtime fan of classic survival horror, going back to fixed camera angles and tank controls, both games are slightly uneven but impressive indie alternatives from Chilean developer Dual Effect. They have all the trappings of classic Resident Evil and Silent Hill games. Think fixed camera angles, inventory management, save rooms with soothing music, and a mix of logical and absurd puzzles, and combat that is more about conserving supplies and using the right tools, rather than skillful movement and aiming, though that can certainly help. The setup for Tormented Souls is simple but effective, with limited exposition and lingering questions that benefit the narrative flow. Protagonist Caroline Walker receives a photograph of two girls, the sight of which causes her extreme pain. Following the address on the back of the photo, she travels to the remote Wildberger hospital, sneaks inside, and ends up clubbed from behind. She wakes up naked in a bathtub, missing an eye and no clue as to what's going on or why twisted monsters now stalk the halls. Like the best horror games, this leaves the player and the protagonist on the same journey of discovery, without being burdened by too much prior knowledge that could ruin the sense of mystery or take the edge off the horror. That said, the storytelling is somewhat limited outside of a few key cutscenes towards the end of the game. She meets a priest seemingly oblivious to the monsters, encounters the little girl seen in the photograph, and discovers plenty of notes and audio recordings that recount the tragic story of the Wildberger family and the horrors that took place. Taking a few optional steps to save Anna is canonical, but it's not too hard to get the true ending if you're paying attention. Without wanting to spoil too much too soon, the sequel picks up right after the first game, as Caroline and Anna seek solitude and healing at an old monastery. The same forces that consumed the Wildberger hospital re-emerge in a new setting with an equally dark past. Many of those who offered salvation have become twisted by their own desires, shame and guilt, which leaves Caroline on a quest to save Anna again in yet another monster-ridden setting. Once again, there's a secondary cast that may or may not be trustworthy, and your actions towards the end of the game, primarily based on your willingness to backtrack, are important to save a key character and unlock the true ending. All that said, the Tormented Souls games are more body horror than psychological horror. The setting, brisk pacing, and narrative beats kept me engaged and pushing forward through both games, but they ultimately serve as an excuse to drag Caroline through increasingly decrepit, bizarre, and blood-stained environments, packed with an inordinate number of key items and puzzles. The original Spencer Mansion in 1996's Resident Evil felt illogical, with misplaced keys and puzzles that forced you to backtrack from one side of the mansion grounds to the other. In contrast, the Wildberger Hospital and Villa Hesse veer more towards Silent Hill levels of weirdness, including unexplained time travel and Tormented Souls' own take on a twisted otherworld. Of course, it all boils down to locked doors and key hunts, but what counts as a key can be wildly variable, and is often just one step on the path towards another key. There are clues to codes found in both documents and environmental details. Darkness is lethal, but there are times you need to disable light sources to solve puzzles. Inspecting and combining items within the inventory screen is mandatory, and most puzzles involve working out the right sequence of actions, with enough variables that brute forcing the solution is difficult. If you enjoy sifting through notes, jotting down notes from environmental text, and solving twisted puzzles, Tormented Souls 1 and 2 should be on your radar. The only problem, perhaps, is that the puzzles and other designs can feel derivative, an amalgamation of the best parts of other survival horror classics. The sequel is a far more confident game and more cohesive in design, whereas the original Tormented Souls feels disconnected at times, despite still offering entertaining puzzles. On top of the derivative mechanics, the combat in both games is never more than fine. Unless I missed something, the DIY weapons Caroline uses don't seem to make any sense in the context of a character, but the modified nail gun and a pipe-based shotgun look and sound suitably powerful, as you blast enemies to the floor and finish them off with a melee weapon to conserve ammunition. The combat always feels secondary to the puzzles, and even the rare boss fights rely more on pattern recognition and using items to end the fight, not simply unloading your most powerful ammunition into them. This skewed focus is most notable in the first game, in which clearing out areas to run around freely and focus on the puzzling is easier. Tormented Souls 2 tries to keep you on your toes by repopulating areas with monsters more frequently, but if you ever get stuck on a puzzle, it's not uncommon to find yourself looping through empty corridors and rooms, looking for a key or a clue you missed. Some might find that design unsatisfying, but returning to the title of this piece, the Tormented Souls games are for those who like a spot of survival horror in their puzzle games. If you look past the dubious titillation from the opening scene of the first game, Dual Effect has consistently created environments that are a mix of beautifully detailed and terrifying, thick with an atmosphere of dread, elevated by creepy ambience and music, and packed with challenging puzzles to solve. If solving weird, twisted and sometimes illogical puzzles are why you love classic survival horror games, don't pass over the Tormented Souls games because of their indie status and budget pricing. If you've got this far, please consider giving the video a like and maybe subscribing to our channel as it helps us grow.